following segment is taken from the full video, Why I Don't Trust the Media. If you'd like to watch the piece in its entirety, follow the link in the description.
I am Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Why I don't trust the media, and why you should probably be skeptical of it as well. So the media, the news information industry, or some might say the news entertainment industry, is a business. They have a business model. They're in this game for profit of one form or another. And in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of good things come from people chasing the profit motive. Almost all the goods and services we enjoy came from somebody trying to make a buck. Unfortunately, sometimes there's perverse incentives in a market. And it's my thesis that these perverse incentives have corrupted a lot of the media. So in this video, I'm going to outline 3 of those perverse incentives and explain why I think they've made the media untrustworthy. First, let's define what I mean when I say the media. The media would be the whole gambit. Corporate news, think of like cable news, for example, CNN, Fox, MSNBC. The more traditional networks, ABC, NBC, CBS. You can think of print media. Of course, all of them are online now, one form or another. Talk radio, throw state media in there as well, NPR. And I would even include my favorite source of media, which would be the alternative media, podcasters, independent journalists, things like those. Now, of all of them, I think the alternative media is more interesting. The internet, podcasting, it's just a better forum for disseminating information for reasons I could get into later. But even though I like the alternative media, it still faces the same incentives. So that's what I mean when I say the media. My distrust of the media actually started at a very young age. My parents were self-employed. My dad had a small business and a few employees. I remember once a local TV station was doing a story on the industry that my father's business was in. And as part of this story, they decided they wanted to interview, a local person that was engaged in that business. So they came into my dad's shop and interviewed one of his employees. Later, this interview, part of it aired on their news channel later. And as a child, I remember seeing this. I was maybe 10, give or take a few years. I remember watching this, and as they were airing this interview, the chyron underneath misidentified the employee as the owner, which obviously I knew was wrong. It was my parents that owned this business. The person they were interviewing was just a manager there. And it wasn't a critical point to the story, but it was just something that I noticed that they got wrong. And I remember thinking, these people are journalists, they're reporters. Their whole job is to verify facts and report things accurately, and yet they missed this simple detail. And like I said, it wasn't critical to the story, but it's just something I picked up on. As a kid, I was very interested in social studies, politics, history, economics, things like that. Social studies was my favorite class in school, so political things always interested me. So as a teenager, remember sometime around the time I was a teenager, my parents got cable, so we had cable news, CNN. I'm not sure if Fox was out then or not, but it came shortly after. I remember watching the cable news networks and the sort of the political analyst shows like Crossfire, where they'd have a couple of people, sometimes 3 or 4 people of different perspectives, and they'd debate, if you want to call it that. And it was interesting for a while. I like to see the clash of ideas and people work things out. I soon began to realize it was just superficial and never really led anywhere. Like, it would just be, They'd cover a topic for a few minutes. By cover, I mean, you'd have one guy arguing this position, another guy arguing a different position. They'd just be talking over each other. They'd interrupt each other all the time. And they really wouldn't get into depth or detail. They just shout talking points at one another. Then they'd go to a commercial break. And when they came back, they'd start talking about something else. And it just felt like a total waste of time. Like it was agitating and lacked any depth. It was almost as bad as watching Jerry Springer, just people shouting over each other. So later in my teenage years, I would start to listen to talk radio, because on talk radio, at least, you'd have a 2 or 3 hour show, and they'd talk an issue out, and they'd take callers, so it was a little more interactive, or you could have people call in and maybe challenge what the host was saying, give different perspectives. And it was a little bit better than a cable news show, but I noticed deficits there as well. Not to mention some shows were just terrible. They were just like 2 or 3 hours, ton of commercial breaks, and in between commercial breaks it was like as slow as possible. Like it's like the host had a limited amount of things to say, and he had to fit it into a 2 hour time block, so he would just drag things out and take forever to make his point. So now I mostly get my information from the alternative media. I just think online is a better platform than television, radio. It's a little more interactive and easier for me to consume than a lot of print. I don't have time to sit down and read a lot, so if I can listen to a podcast or listen to a speaker online talk about a topic, it's much easier for me to consume. It doesn't have the same constraints as, say, radio, where you got to fill a 2 hour time block and you got to find something to talk about, or you got to drag your topic out as long as possible. Or the other extreme, like television, where you only got 5 minutes to talk about something, and then you got to go to a commercial break, and then you got to cover the next topic. So it's like the best of both worlds. You can take as much time as you need, say on a podcast, to hash a topic out, and you don't have to fill it full of filler because you got to fill a 3 hour show every day. That said, all these forms face the perverse incentives that I'm going to talk about in the rest of this video. You've been watching the Fletch Report. If you're hearing this, it means you've made it to the end of the video. But before you click onto the next thing and continue down whatever rabbit hole you're on YouTube or Rumble, I've got a small favor to ask. If you found value in my content and you want to help the channel out, the best thing you can do is share it with somebody else that you think will find value in it. Don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more. Links to the channel on YouTube and Rumble will be provided below. Additionally, I'm making a Facebook page for the channel, as well as a X/formerly Twitter. Feel free to follow me on those platforms as well. If you're feeling exceptionally generous, provided in the description below will be a link to Buy Me a Coffee, which is the online equivalent of a tip jar. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting the channel.